Wow, people are really enjoying this. I should probably get to work on the next one, really. What was I doing? Oh yeah, the video. I was not expecting the first video to do as well as it did, and well, I'm happy. I won't say I'm not happy, but you know, I'm very glad that other people are showing an interest in this, and I'm glad to keep going. So all of this video recording was made around the same time as those first clips, so it's not live commentary, unfortunately. If you'd like live commentary, let me know, but obviously you'd hear my keyboard and whatnot, so it might be a bit finicky, but I'm just going to be narrating over a few clips, and I'm just going to let you just explain what's going on, really. But first we're starting with the top house near the deep woods where you get the sword. I think it's the Know-It-All Brothers house. It was a smaller build, definitely one of the favourite ones. It definitely got me into trying to use the entity tool a lot more as I was exploring different things. But the fireplace in the middle was definitely a fun little challenge to figure out, because a lot of the textures were fighting each other, so it's finding out that good spacing to make a nice shape while also kind of creating a good centerpiece for the room. But as you can see, I'm just testing out a lot of different placements for things, seeing what works, and eventually I get something that does work, having two wide with one corners. You can see at the top the textures are fighting a lot, so I fixed that just by ever so slightly offsetting them each when lowering them into the ground. So they're all slightly different heights, just to stop it from fighting with the textures. Hopefully it looks a lot cleaner. It does end up looking a lot nicer, which is great. But I thought I'd just put this in there so you know, shows you how I actually made it. But using the grid snap, it was quite easy to get them into place. It's definitely a nice feature, having that grid snap. But once I've set a base height using the grid snap, I do go back in and adjust each one so they're just slightly different. I think it shows it here, but I'm just adding in the fireplace. You can see I've also adjusted them so they're a bit skew-if as well. But I added a cooking pot into the middle just to give it some visual depth, and then here I'm covering up the overlap with some of the black slate floor traps, I think they're called. They're like slabs basically, but they're thin enough just to look nice. So I just throw those around the entire fire pit just so it looks nice and you don't see the gems underneath, which is giving the room a glow. The reason I cut out me placing the gemstones like is because the entity hitbox doesn't allow you to place blocks normally for some reason. I don't know if it's a bug or if it's intended because of their hitbox, so it was a lot of me finicking around with the edits and then a lot of the selection tool to move objects. So it was a lot of work just to try and get them in, so I didn't think it was worth watching, because I think it was about 10-20 minutes to get them all sorted and then change the blocks. I think I changed them twice because I just wasn't happy with what blocks they were. But I think after all this work, I think it took me about 40 minutes to get this all put together. So I think it looks a lot nicer than it does than what it did originally, which is nice. Obviously, if I did this with blocks, it'd be much bigger, and I don't think there'd be room for it in the house. I think using these entity tools to create an object without hitboxes allowed it to be much more spacious in the room. Oh. Here I'm adding the table that's in the back of the room where the Know-It-All Brothers normally sit in the game, so you can see a few of them. Eventually I'll go and adding custom NPCs into the game, but here I'm just scaling it up and just trying to find a size that fits well. Kind of fits the whole scale of the house. It is clipping into the wall a little bit, but it's not the biggest issue ever. Again, I just copy the entity, scale it down for the chairs at the side of them. but it's definitely the entity tools are quite a nice tool. I don't know why I said tool twice, I'm not cutting that out. It's still early access, obviously, so I think there's a few bugs that can be worked with the entity tool. Definitely needs some work, but it's a good tool to use. Allows a lot more creative freedom in, especially adding details around like these pots as well, have them at different angles, different sizes, and in places they should just really not be placed. Just looking from the outside, see if anything needs kind of rescaling. I think it all worked pretty well, which is good. And then here I am trying to copy. The lock to surface tool is also really nice for making sure nothing clips through the ground as well. So if you're using a lot of objects to move, just throw it on, move them, and then you can edit them later. And then after adding the pots, I work on the shelves that's on the right of the room. Again, using the entity tool to add details that you wouldn't normally be able to achieve in this scale. So I'm adding the pillars using the entity tool, just very quickly, just to see what they'd look like. That's another problem with the entity tool, is the hitboxes are a bit finicky. You'll see that later as well when I work on the other building. But definitely looks a lot nicer than it would without them. Here I'm looking for a piece to put on top of the things. I was trying to think of using these for the shelves to make them thinner, but it just didn't look that nice. So I just went back to using the half slabs again. I did put them on top just to add that detail, but here I'm using the entity tool again to fill the shelf with objects, because in the game they have a few potions and a few jars, so I just use the same potion model and then a few of the jar models just to fill in the space a bit more, like that. So it's just, again, something you wouldn't really be able to do in the base game, so I think it's quite nice. And then in the bottom they have the plates and the green jug, so I'm just adding those in. Luckily there was a plate in the game, so I didn't have to make a custom one. And then there is also a nice jar. See, I cycle through a few and finally find it. But that's that shelf done. I think it looked quite nice, especially with the campfire in the middle. Here I'm just trying to adjust the hitboxes, see if it works, but I think my game ended up crashing there, that's why I cut the footage. But here I just, again, added a bench with the entity tools, and this is what I mean, to add these hitboxes in, I've had to use the selection tool to put them inside of the hitbox, and then I can place them on top normally. If you're wondering why the barrier blocks look like this, these are custom ones I added to the game just so I could see them, and then a custom slab one as well, because the base game ones aren't visible whatsoever, so it's quite easy to lose track of where you've placed them. So I added my own ones for now, and then obviously at a later date I'll remove the textures so they go back to being invisible. But they use the entirely same coding as the normal barrier blocks, it's just that they've been given a texture, so I could actually see. You can see here, I didn't even realise that there was some barrier blocks still up in the corner because you can barely see their outline. So I just replaced those with my normal ones. But I think it's quite nice being able to see where the barriers are and kind of see what you can't actually access. It's much nicer than having to guess where you've placed barrier blocks. Again, here I'm using just a lot of the same entities I've already placed down, so just copy it there. And then take it over to the table here. Used a bench for the table just so I don't have to custom model one. I think it looked quite nice. Same with the bamboo bed on the floor, it's just a table that I've just sunken into the ground. And then yeah, just using the precision tool to move them onto the table. But you can see there for a second that there was the hitbox of the table. It's not even close to where the table is. But it doesn't affect. It doesn't actually have proper collisions. It's not too big of a deal. It's more just building effect. That's all. Just makes it a bit harder to build with. That's all. But finish up the table now. I think I'm quite happy with how the Know It All Brothers house turned out. I'm just checking, see if I could change some of the barriers, but pretty happy with how it turned out. So this, I forgot to record a bit, but I added a few more details like the curtains, the posts on the wall, but the rest you mostly saw. It's just that curtain at the front of the door. It's just using the tent blocks and some rope, and then the buckets in the corner. But you can see I used some of the half slabs to give the pots just a bit more height on their hitbox. But that is the Nobu Brothers finish. And this one I had a lot of fun doing, is the Kokiri Shop. This was probably, I think I took 2, maybe 3 hours to build. I think I did sit around for half an hour, but this is one of my favourites. Again, using the entity tools here. This is, again, as I said in the last video, that I'm not using, it's not going to be one-to-one the game. I'm adding a lot of details that aren't in the original game, like this overhang on the canopy, I think they're called. I'm not too sure. But I'm using the other tent pieces just to give it a bit of an overhang. Just to see, give it some depth. It's not as flat. I think it looked quite nice. So I'm just lining it up. That's another problem. I wish the entity tool didn't use the player rotation. I wish it started at 0. But as you can see here, I've just placed them all the way around. So it looks like that. I think it looked quite nice. I still think it looked a bit flat, so I do eventually add to the top to curve it up a bit. See, I'm just here. I'm just there, just trying to add a bit of curvature. So I do 2 layers just to give it a nice curve. So yeah, here's the back layer, add first. Just trying to adjust its rotation so it's flat. That's another thing, if you click on the wheel trying to get out of it, it keeps you on the wheel. So there's a few bugs again with the entity tool, but as you see, just pasting it across like that. And then as you can see, I go back in again, rotate it slightly steeper, well, not steeper, you know what I meant, shallower, and then just paste it back along to add more curvature. I did realise the alignment was a bit iff, but I think it added to like the kind of tattered, not tattered effect, more the, I think it just looked nicer having it a bit skew-iff than having it if it was perfectly straight. See, I adjust this one slightly and then just paste them all the way along, just like that, to get the nice curve. I go back in and edit the sides so the overhang follows the curvature of the actual like slope of it now, instead of just having it flat and there being a hole there. But so that just follows it in. I think I only added 2 pieces here, which isn't too bad. The only thing with using entities in this kind of manner is a lot of the popping issues are quite visible. So it's, sometimes you'll see it on your screen and it still disappears as if it isn't being rendered because of the hitboxes not being properly aligned. So I think if they need to do anything with this tool, it's definitely that they need to have it so the hitboxes align with the models. But here I just take this top piece here. When you're grabbing an entity as well, it moves to where your cursor's looking, so that's also a bit annoying, so you have to readjust it. But just take it to the other side, so it's even on both sides now. But I go in and remove these middle pieces here just to open it up a bit more. I did try and add like a slope like I did on the edges, but it would just stick through the top, and there isn't like a half piece to use. So I thought I'd just leave it open and kind of see what people think, come back to it later. But I was just like, for now, just leave it open like that. See, I'm looking for other pieces, but I realised there isn't one that I'm kind of looking for. But yeah, that's the finished canopy. I think it really adds to the shop's silhouette. See, another thing I wanted to do was kind of make the shop a bit rounder. So I'm using the, I think they're the branches. But they're like the posts of the wood. So I'd add those around the shop. But you can see here again the hitbox jank's kind of coming in. So I just kind of ignore it for now, and I'll come back to it in a second. But yeah, I have to use the, I have to just copy paste it into the hitbox area and then just place 2 more on top. At the top I was kind of seeing if I could add any more of the red, I do come back to later and use one of the red logs beams to just add a tip of the beams into red, so it just, because as you can see, it removes a lot of the red from the top of the shop, which is meant to be the arrows. So obviously I'm looking at branches, see which ones we've got, and then I thought they were called posts at first, and I realised they were called branches. But there's that fire red one as well, but I used the much maroonier looking one because I didn't like how bright the red was. Sorry, itchy nose. Yeah, I didn't like how bright the red was, so I went with these ones. Again, just using the same dry wood branch for the bottom, and then when I got to that top layer, I'd use one of the redwood branch ones. But it just definitely adds a lot more curvature. Obviously, it's meant to be a massive tree stump, so I think anything to get it rounder looks a lot nicer. And then working on the top has the wood rings, so I'm using the quarter dirt slabs because I think they're quite a nice dark colour. They don't look too bad out of place, so using them to kind of outline the rings looks quite nice. Just trying to find a nice circular shape like that. We just add some small adjustments there. And then originally I was going to use these for the lines as well, but they didn't work. So I ended up using some of the tent pieces as well. Originally I used these orange, the hide ones, but they do have their variations, as you can see. And they're unfortunately not random, they are like dependent on the placement in the world. So I tried to work around them, but for a lot of these I couldn't really change where the pattern was going. So I ended up using the originally I was going to replace them all with the orange one, but then it looked a bit bright, so I ended up just going back to swapping any with the visible hide with an orange one. So it kind of worked out, just giving it a bit of colour as well. I think it looked quite nice. Luckily I didn't have to adjust too many of them into the orange ones, but just add some on the outside as well. But I think it gave it quite a nice look, and here's working on the inside, just getting all the, so using like the wood, I wouldn't say wood dirt, looks like stick dirt, and then a bit of the red cloth for the carpet, this front of the store. But here I'm just laying out the shape of the store as it is, just pretty simple box at the back, and then it kind of curves a little on the left side. But eventually I do end up changing the roof from slabs to blocks, just so there's no disconnect at the top of the logs. But you can see here I'm just kind of building in the walls fully. I accidentally punched a hole in the roof. But you can see I'm not very good at placing the roof. And then I was kind of just trying to eye up how big I'd want the window to be, that you'd talk to the shopkeeper. There you go. So I went with 3. I think I changed it eventually just to be a bit taller using slabs. But then to get the countertop, again using the entity tool, I used some of the softwood planks, or slabs, sorry, to outline the counter like that. But there you go, you can change that wall because I did it wrong. But you can see I'm trying to see if I can add any more height to the counter. I went with the dry wood slabs because it's the log that I'm using for the wood. And then here I'm adding the little posters that sit below the counter. I think there's about 4 or 5 of them. But I'm using the tent pieces are really nice for like anything paper or posters, I think. So I use a lot of them to create the posters, but I'm just copying and pasting the same one across the counter. So there's 2 there, and I think there's 3 there, and then there's 2 on the other side, like that. And then I move it up to do the ones across the top. So I make these a bit bigger just because they looked bigger in the game. Again, that same bug with the entity tool, for some reason it teleported it back down there, so I just had to readjust. But then just place these in where they need to go. Again, a few more bugs with the entity tool, but it's nothing. If you just put the time in and just work around it, it's not too big of a deal. But again, copy and paste them just where they need to be. And then this one's a bit larger because this is the one that advertises the Deku shield. I haven't made the Deku shield as of yet, so I do just place it with the Hylian shield for now. So at least it is the correct shield. But you'll see that later. Then I go back in to add some colour to the poster because they have... Well, I forgot I did the shield first. But eventually this will be replaced with the Deku shield. But that just gets added in quite quickly just to have a concept of what the poster will look like when the actual shield's in there. So I'm just lining it up so it's straight. Again, more problems with the entity tool, like not being able to unselect. But there we are. And that just slips in there. And then obviously when we get the Deku shield model, I'll replace it. But here I'm adding the small details to the poster. So it's got a little red at the top right and then a bit of a bigger blue square will be added later. Just to mimic the kind of silhouette of the poster. I didn't think putting too much detail into these was necessary. Just try and not have too many entities in the small space that there is. You can see here, add the top red squares. Kind of just deciding what to add next. And then obviously I go back in and add the blue ones. These are going to be a bit bigger than the red ones, just they overhang a little. I think you can see I adjust the size so they're just a bit bigger. But you can see the popping there as well with the entities because of the hitbox. But you can see they're just slightly bigger than the red ones, which I think made them look quite nice. Again, so yeah, just to give it the general idea of those bottom posters that were in the shop front. Now this bit was what took the longest. This is for the sign above. I am looking for the hitbox tool to see if I can adjust the hitbox again, but it just doesn't pop up, so I just leave it as it is. Bit of a skew if. Again, same bug that's moving it, but I didn't bother too bad. But this is going to be the back of the sign. Just because it's a nice long rectangle shape of wood. Like that. There we go. But then that goes up there to create the backing of the sign. I do try using one just really large, but then I realised the texture would look a little off. So I decided to use multiple, so I think I used 6. 3 at the bottom and 3 at the top just to create that shape. See, the hitboxes are a bit weird for grabbing them. Originally I was going to just do this one layer, but then I decided to add a second layer just to make it a bit bigger. See here that I just duplicate it, adjust it slightly so it doesn't collide with itself. The textures should sit individually. Doesn't matter because I cover them all up soon anyway, so. But there we are, and then just like that, there's the backing for the poster. Well, not the poster, the sign. Just like that. Again, just making small adjustments so it sits a bit flush without fighting. There we are. Decided to add the logs as well, just while I think about how I wanted to do the rest of the signs. This was just a quick little addition into the corner. Again, just copy and pasting. I think these are the posts instead of the branches. Again, I think they're just the softwood ones. Just like that. So yeah, I'm just adding smaller details around while I think about what I should use for the shop. And then I've got these dark temple jars because they look quite nice. Mimic the green jars that are in the base game. Again, I'm just trying to add hitboxes again. A bit of a finick, but it's not too bad of a problem to just get sorted very quickly. You see, just copy the jar to the other side, give it a bit of a different rotation, and then, but you can see on the right I've added all the hitboxes for the logs and the jar as well. I did originally have the gaps in just to save on adding so many different hitboxes, but just at the end I ended up just doing anything normally. As you can see, I've swapped the ceiling as well, but I'm just trying to add in a bit of lighting. So I'm using the acorn lanterns. I can't remember the name. The Quebec, not Quebec. Quebec, I think they're called. Their lanterns, they look quite nice. They fit the Kokiri quite nicely. Here I'm just adding some support. I thought it just looked nice. But I very much procrastinated making that sign because it'd be a lot of effort. Here I'm adding a ceiling, but you can see because of the benches that make up the sign, I'm not able to put the blocks where I want them. So I start by adding the back 2 layers, which I can place just fine. And then what I'd do is just end up moving that middle row forward and then just replacing the middle row just manually. There we are, and then just adding one of the Quebec lanterns in. Just add a bit of glow behind the counter. Here's a little detail I thought would look quite nice that I added myself, is like a hanging rope that you'd hang the posters from, instead of having them at the top of the counter. So you can see I'm just adding in a bit of rope behind all the posters, and then I'll move the posters down to match the height, so it looks like they're actually hanging off them. See, I added a few more lanterns to the side as well, just to light up the space a bit more. So yeah, I do fiddle with it a bit, just to get it just right. There we are. And then, I don't know why that one's differently coloured. I just didn't bother to try and fix it. But then I just add another one at the end just to turn it back up into the wood. Like that. I think I do adjust it a bit more, so it looks like it's actually in the wood now. But there we are. There we are, and then also I added grass along the floor and then the stool next to the thing. I thought that the grass would look quite nice, saying it's inside a log. You know, you kind of have moss growing and whatnot. So I think just adding those bits of grass just kind of added to the environment. But here you can see I'm moving the posters down. Obviously they're not in the same positions as they were. I think I end up leaving that one at the top left just where it is. I can't remember. No, I do end up moving it. I apparently had 2 in the same place, but no, I end up leaving it where it is. I think, yeah, I had 2 back and then just, so it looks nice all together. But here's what took the longest. I think this was about 40 minutes. It's creating the sign, the shop sign, using individual little logs to spell out the letters. Obviously they're not real letters, they're the language of the Kokiri. But the thing with using these posters, even when rotated, the hitboxes are slightly off, so if I made a small little mistake, it'd be like a little treasure hunt trying to find where the hitbox went. But luckily I didn't make too many mistakes while making this, so it was quite fun. So I'm just going to let you watch this bit and just see what you think. Oh, my voice is killing me. But yeah, you can see the sign is finished. I think it came out quite nice. You could see at the end of that clip I was trying to fight the hitboxes of where the logs were, but I was kind of here just looking back, looking at the game, trying to see if they lined up. And I think I got pretty close with what we could. I think I was quite happy with how it turned out. You see I'm jumping with excitement. Moving on to the behind the store, so I'm working on the shelves here. See that hold the items that you buy. I'm just trying to figure out a good spacing between them. But again, just the same ones. I made them 2 wide, and then I make them so it's 2 by 2, so they're 4 wide. Like that. I don't show making the other shelf. There is 2 shelves in this room, just as you can see there, but it's just pretty much identical to the one on the left, just flipped. So I didn't think there was much worth showing it being made. You see I'm fighting the entity tool again, but using the log posts to make the fences. I don't like how high it sits, so I do eventually go back and just adjust them slightly, so they just fit up a bit better to where I would like them to sit. And then just copy all the posts over to the other side. Like that. Make sure they can't line up. See, they're not going to be perfectly lined up, but keep pressing the wrong keybinds. But I start top to bottom, so at least they know they'll end up at the same place. But there we are, that's the post add in. I didn't like how thin they were. So you do see I go back in and add 2 more in front, so the shelves are a bit wider than what they normally were before. There we are again. Anything I do on this left shelf, I'll do on the right shelf as well. See, I'm just trying to line them up. There we are. You can see there we are. So I like how those shelves look a lot better. Just kind of looking back at the game, seeing what else I was missing, if there's anything else to add to the shelves. And then I just adjust the posts so they're actually in the middle now. I think, yeah. But then here we are. So I'm adding the red kind of like cloth that sits on top of the shelves. Only on the top here. I didn't think it was worth adding it to the bottom shelf. But same thing I did, put the bottom one in and then copy it all the way up. And just duplicate it to the other side and then do the same thing. Make sure the bottom one sits where I want it and then just copy and paste it all the way up. Like that. Again, yeah, I'll just prove I actually did it to the other side as well. There we are. So both shelves are identical. I think the one on the right is slightly angled different, but you can't really tell from the front, which is what I wanted. So I'm here just kind of just double checking it all again. But I did also add leaves to the bottom of the carpet just to give a bit of texture. But here I'm working on the 3 baskets that sit, the 3 kind of like cloth bags that sit on the right of the store. So I'm starting by adding the logs in that support the bags all together. Again, just once I got one in, it's basically the same thing, just copy and pasted the other 3 in, as you can see. And then I was kind of looking for something that looked like that cloth bag. And I think I ended up on the bamboo planter, just because of the texture of it mostly. So I just adjust the scale a bit, and I use these to create the baskets. I make sure they're not sticking into the wall too much, but a little isn't going to be the end of the world. I scale them up, scale them down, whatever I'm needed to. And then there we are. I do eventually add support so they're not just floating there, obviously. But here we are. And then I cut out the rope bit because it was basically the same thing. Put rope in and then connect it to the log. But I use another bamboo planter on top just to close it off. You see, I grabbed the wrong thing again. These are the hitboxes. But all I did was copy, flip, scale it down a bit, and then put it in. So it just created the top of those. I think they came out quite nice. But yeah, all that just to create simple little baskets on the edge. That was basically the majority of the story. You see here, this is what it looks like from the outside. So this is completed now. Again, you got like the nice log pattern on top, again with the rings. I'm just covering these up because I didn't like how the logs looked, but I did realise watching this back there is a cloth one. I will change that eventually. Unless I do change it, I didn't realise. But yeah. So that was all the outside of the build. I know I didn't show much of building of it because it's basically the same thing as the other ones. Just wood cylinder, add some legs. Call it a day, but here we are. So this is the inside, the canopy, and then I get to the inside here. Again, just using a bit of different dirt to texture the floor. I didn't show the leaf sign either. I think I lost the footage for that. But it's just leaf blocks, and then the same thing I did for the top sign, table, and then some logs. But I just did some little off-camera touches, like adding some posters in the back, adding a shelf to the side, and a bit more lighting. I've got full bright on here, so obviously the warmth isn't there, but that's basically everything finished. Got you. I wanted to show you how I made Link. So obviously I started with I used the messy mop hair, and then the thin eyebrows, all in the blonde colour, obviously. Eyelids I went with almond, and then the green. Obviously no facial hair. For hats, I did have, originally I was going to use this bandana in green, because obviously they don't have kind of his like tunic hat, or you could use the beanie because it has that point. So it's entirely up to preference, but I decided just to not use one. There's a few other beanies you can use as well. For the earrings, I used the double earrings, only on his left ear, in either gold or bronze, whatever colour pops out more for you. Again, just on his left ear. Body, I used just the suit in grey, just to fill out the chest, you can see it there. And then body, it doesn't really matter, default muscular, you're not going to see it. As long as I use this skin colour, so he's not too pale, but he's not too dark. I went with the makeup, just to make his eyelids a bit deeper. As you can see without them, he kind of loses it, so just to add a bit more depth. Mouth, I just went with thin mouth, just because he doesn't express much. And then obviously the elf ears, or you could use the drooping elf ears if you wanted lower, but I like them kind of sticking up. Now for the outfit, this is the undertop. I used the long sleeves, so you get the white sleeves, but you also get the grey tunic underneath. And then for the overtop, I used the villager tunic in green, obviously to get the tunic. Hands, I used the mining gloves. And then for the legs, I used the crude skirt, and then thigh-high stocks to get the leggings, and then I used I think they're the warm boots, yeah, just to create the look. The few things you can change is on the tunic and the skirt, you can change the colours. You get the Zora tunic or the Goron tunic, you see the red, or for I changed the wrong thing here. You can use it, I didn't like the darker blue, but you can use this lighter blue down here as well to create the Zora tunic. Again, I just like the default green one. Or you could change it all up. You could make Dark Link by using some of the darker colours as well. Another thing is you could change to these gloves here, the combat gloves I think they're called, to get the belts. But I think that turned out pretty well.